Hello everybody. This is Dr. Alba Nino. I am professor at the Couple and Family Therapy program at the San Diego campus here in Alliant. And I am going to give some information about qualitative research and specifically about qualitative dissertations. So one of the things that I want to be clear about is that this is not meant to be like a class on qualitative dissertations. It is basically, what I'm saying is taken from my experience as a qualitative researcher myself and as a dissertation chair. Because I'm assuming that the audience that we have, basically the people who are going to listen and see these videos, are people who are in a doctoral program, are taking these classes, so I don't want to go over those things. I want to go to teach more practical things. So these are the factors to keep in mind when doing a qualitative dissertation. One of the first things that I want to mention is that doing a qualitative dissertation is as demanding as it is fascinating. One of the things that I have found is that on the one hand, everything that has to be with collecting and analyzing data is a very thrilling process because it involves getting to know a population or getting to know a situation and really getting involved. And at the same time, many times the volume of information that we get is very big, and so that will require a lot of analysis. So, but it is a very, very enriching process. So again, like some of the factors to keep in mind is that when we're talking about qualitative research, we're talking about research that is idiographic, and that means that this is not research that is meant to generate information that is applicable for the general population or to basically to be generalizable. This is a way. Qualitative research is a way to highlight the uniqueness of a population, of a process, of a circumstance, whatever that is that we're studying. And one of the beautiful things about qualitative research is that this is a way in which we can actually get to know the perspectives and the subjectivity and the meaning that people build and that people that construed around their lives and about things that are meaningful to them. And so, of course, I mean, this is a way in which we can bring the voices of people to the rest of the people, to the people that are going to be looking at our research and sharing our research. So to do qualitative research, one of the things is that this is a research that allows for a lot of flexibility and creativity, and but we need to balance that with a lot of focus and rigor, because one of the things that can happen is that if we lean on the side of the creativity, we can get into not having a clear direction with all the things that we can find and that can be fascinating. On the other hand, when we're leaning too much on the side of rigor or too strict, we can lose a lot of the richness that we can get from what we're studying. So that balance is actually one of the things that really enriches the process. Another thing that I really like about qualitative research is that it requires from us, the researcher, a more active role, because we need to be more involved in the entire process in terms of getting closer to, for example, if we are doing interviews, that means that we actually have to share some time with the people that we're interviewing. The same thing if we're doing focus groups or if we're doing ethnography, that it means that we're going to really get involved with a population, with a group. And so that means that is a more intimate way of learning about whatever it is that we're learning. So yeah, as I was mentioning, I mean, there are many sources of data, like it can be written, it can be interviews, it can be focus groups, it can be journals, it can be social media postings. It can be pictures, videos. I mean, the sources of qualitative data are endless. And the information that we can get from those sources is also very rich and complex. And if there is something that I have observed that makes a difference between a process in which basically the person doing the dissertation is like getting out of focus, and a person that can actually go and finish the research project and finish the dissertation, is the research question. One of the things about the research question, having a clear research question, is that it gave us it gives us some boundaries in terms of what is that we're supposed to be looking at, and what are the things that we're not interested in that particular moment. And that is absolutely necessary when we're doing qualitative research, because as I said, the data can be too rich. We need to have that focus and that limit, and that is given to us by the research question. So, I mean, one of the things, for example, at some point I participated in some focus groups, and we were interviewing women who were survivors of breast cancer, and they were talking about excuse me, their experiences of surviving breast cancer and parenting, and how surviving the breast cancer and going through the whole process affected their parenting. Well, the thing is that when we were doing those focus groups, they talk about that, but they also talk about how it was the entire treatment. They talk about the relationship with their doctors. They talked about their growing experiences through that process. And what we did is that with all that information, we first had the research question that was about parenting, and we published some articles about that. And then we continued asking the same data some other questions. Okay, so they already spoke about the relationship with the doctors. So we also went back to the data and did some analysis with a different research question. And so the data told us something different. And then we published a different paper. And that basically what I'm trying to say is that research question is what is going to give you the focus. So whenever you're looking at this very rich data, you know what you're looking for and you don't get overwhelmed by it. And also very related to this is that this rich and complex data, when you're analyzing it, pen and paper might not be enough. And I highly, highly recommend to use a qualitative data analysis software. The ones that I'm familiar with are MaxQDA and InVivo. That doesn't mean that those are the ones that you need to use. Those are the ones that are better known. And my particular preference is for MaxQDA. Okay. This is one of the things that I really want to emphasize. Not liking statistics is not a good reason to do a qualitative dissertation. Many people end up choosing to do a qualitative dissertation because they want to avoid something, not because they want to go for something, which will be the right reason to use a qualitative methodology. And the thing is that if you're coming here because you don't want to struggle with the statistics, and you're somehow looking for an easier way of doing your dissertation, you're going to be basically facing the reality that doing qualitative analysis is actually time consuming, and it can be more complicated because it is not as straightforward. In many ways, statistics ends up being easier because it is straightforward. If you're going to choose to do a qualitative dissertation, choose it because it fits the question that you're asking, because it fits actually the topic that you're researching, and also because you want to get enticed by this process. One final thing that I want to mention before we actually start talking about the writing is that another element that is very, very important in qualitative research is the researcher. So you are very important in this process. Everything, because how you choose a dissertation topic has everything to do with you, both in quantitative or qualitative research. But in qualitative research, we as the researcher are more the instrument of the research. So our values, our preconceptions, our history, all those things actually end up affecting the way we're doing this research. And depending on what methodology you choose, what specific methodology, you can, basically the methodology is going to decide what you're going to do with yourself. And let me explain that better. So, for example, there, what to do with yourself depends on your specific research methodology. Let me say it that way. Because there are some methodologies that will say that your preconceptions and your history and your ideas and your values have to be put aside, and that you have to work consistently on keeping those things aside. There are some other methodologies that actually are more flexible and will say that it is impossible to keep those things completely aside, and that so because of that they will open more room for the researcher and his or her own values and perspectives. So what is the role of those values? It depends on the specific methodology. But one of the things that is clear is that you as a researcher are going to have a very active role both in collecting the data and in analyzing the data. As I said before, when it comes to collecting the data, in qualitative research, we're going to have way more interaction with the people, especially because many times the source of information is interviews or focus groups or observation. And that means interacting with people. That means being there with them. And many times immersing ourselves in their world. And because of that, I mean, like even the way we conduct the interview, if we're shy or not, if we end up overpowering the person that we're interviewing, all those things end up affecting the process. So we, like our role and how we carry ourselves, that makes a huge difference in qualitative research. And so in relation to that, it's very important that you locate yourself. And that means that you can say what is, for example, the relation that you have with the topic, where the interest comes from. That is part of locating yourself in relation to the topic. That you can locate yourself also in terms of demographic factors. Like in my case, for example, I know that the fact that I am a woman, that I am Latina, that I am an immigrant from Colombia, all those factors are part of my perspective. All those things affect my perspective, and all those things will affect definitely my role as a researcher. So it is important to know that who we are is going to affect the process. And so for that reason, one of the things that I recommend, that I have done and that I recommend doing during the process of research is journaling. And is writing about, for example, how we are looking at the process, how we are looking at the interactions that we're having with the people that we're interviewing, all these things. And all this also needs to be included in the actual dissertation. It is important to include in the actual dissertation document a section about the self of the researcher, where you can put a little bit of your own perspective and to be honest, of your own transformation. But because a process of research tends to be both qualitative or quantitative, tends to be a transformative process for the researcher. Okay, so and especially for people who are doing dissertations and who are in clinical degrees, it is very important to remember that in this situation, you're going to be a researcher and not a therapist. And I have heard, as I said, I am part of the couple and family therapy program. The people that I'm whose dissertations I'm chairing, they tell me at the very beginning, whenever they're starting to do their interviews, how difficult it is to switch the role and to listen to people with different ears, not with the ears of somebody who's trying to promote change and help through therapy, but with the ears that are trying to get to know better their story. And so just keep that in mind. And you're going to face that, especially, as I said, if you're coming from a clinical degree. Okay, so as I said before, I was sharing some factors and that are important in general in terms of to keep in mind in terms of doing qualitative research. Now I want to talk more specifically about some tips related to writing a qualitative dissertation. The first thing to keep in mind, especially when we're writing the beginning, the lit review, is that you're going to read way more than what is necessary to include in the lit review. That's part of the process. The process is to read and read, but maybe a lot of those things that you have read about, a lot of those sources that you consulted, will not be included. And on the one hand, that means that you're going to have a better context in your mind of what the topic is, and you need that. But that doesn't mean that all that needs to be included in the document. So you have to be selective. And as I'm saying there, like not all that is known about the topic has to be included, but only the information that is necessary to conceptualize your research question. And again, the research question is what gave us that focus and that limit, that boundary. So I many times hear my students asking, okay, so but how many pages should I write? And that is not a right question to have in your mind whenever you're writing the lit review. Because I mean, if you say, okay, so I don't know, like 40 pages should be what I have to have, then you're going to end up looking for information just to fill in pages. That's not the idea. The idea is, do you have in your lit review the information that you need to put there to really understand the research question that you have? And just to give an example, my dissertation is on the experiences of immigrant therapists in the clinical experiences of immigrant therapists in this country. And so I included some information about immigration processes, acculturation, and then I included some information about therapeutic processes, specifically dealing with the therapeutic relationship, and I included information that I found about immigrant therapists, but everything that I found was about the training experiences of immigrant therapists. So how was it for them to get training in a foreign country? It was not about whatever happened with them clinically, how it was for them to do therapy. But all this, like these pieces helped me build the context for the question that I had. So for example, whenever I was looking for information about immigration, I didn't want to talk about any type of immigration. I knew that I had to focus on my specific question. And one important thing also to include in the lit review is the description of how you find the information, how you found the information that you found. So what databases you consulted, what, for example, if you were looking for studies, like what was the time frame of the studies, what were the keywords that you used, all these things, So the people who are reading your lit review, they have an idea of where the information is coming from. And one of the things that is very important is that the end of your lit review should be a clear identification of the research gaps, because this is the way that you're going to say, okay, so in my lit review, I can say, this is what is known in this area about this topic, but this is what is not known. And that is why my research question is this particular one. And that is how my research is filling a gap in the literature. So it is very important that the way you write your lit review actually points into that direction, that you're making a case and that you are basically giving some foundation to the idea that, yes, this study is important because it is filling in a gap in our knowledge. Okay, so now switching to the method section. A couple of things that I wanted to say is that I have observed that many times, especially in dissertations, people tend to describe the inclusion or exclusion criteria that they use for the participants, but they actually end up not describing the participants that ended up being recruited for the study. So it is very important to give a thorough description of the participants that are in your study. And I like to divide that in two areas. One is the demographic characteristics that are basically like that we collect about like research participants in general. Things like age, gender, level of education, all these things. But another thing that is important is all the characteristics that are relevant to the specific topic of your study. So, for example, I chair a dissertation that the participants of the study were veterans. So, some important information about the veterans was how long they have been in the military, in what branch of the military they had been, whether they went to, this particular study was about veterans from the Iraq and Afghanistan war, so how long, how many times they were there. So all these characteristics that are specifically and relevant to the specific topic that you're studying. It is very important to have a thorough description of the participants, because at the end, as I said at the beginning, I'm sorry, that sounded funny. Because as I said at the beginning, the qualitative studies are not about general ideas. They are very specific. They are about specific population, about specific processes. And they do not, the intention is not to be generalizable. The intention is to get to know particular populations or particular processes. So it is very important to describe the people that whose stories and whose voices we are researching in our studies. The second area that I wanted to talk about here in the method section is what it has to do with trustworthiness or validity. Basically, there are some specific methods in quantitative research to assess for validity, and there are some formulas to assess for all those things. And that, of course, in qualitative research, we cannot do that. But in qualitative research, there are some procedures that we can use during the entire process of doing our study to be sure that the results that we get to are going to have a good quality and are actually going to represent the voices of the participants that we have. So there is a book that I am citing there in the slide, and there's a particular chapter in that book that I really, really like about trustworthiness in the book Naturalistic Inquiry. It really describes several areas that we have to keep in mind as qualitative researchers, and it also explains the specific methodologies, the specific, let's say, strategies that we can use to increase our trustworthiness in this area, in those areas. So in your write-up, in the method section, you also have to include this, and you have to include specifically how you did whatever it was that you did to increase your trustworthiness. For example, the member checking, if you had an external auditor, if you did triangulation, all these things have to be included there. Okay, and one last thing is writing the results section. Again, the results section you have to focus whatever you write there on the research question. So limit your results to what answers that research question. In terms of organizing the entire chapter, it's important to give a general description of the findings at the very beginning. Specifically, I mean, many times what we find are themes. For example, if we're doing phenomenology or grounded theory or thematic analysis. So the idea will be to give a general description of the themes and then to delve into each one of those themes and to describe them more in depth. Very, very important to use the participants' words as much as possible as the names of the themes. And the other thing is to use quotations from the participants. To give life to the document. Because, I mean, we can describe a theme, and then when we put those quotes, that theme really becomes alive, and that is a way in which the reader actually gets close to the participant that we interviewed or that we interacted with. So this is the way in which we actually bring the voices, their actual words, to the readers of our studies. Okay, so I mean, one of the things, of course, is that dissertation is going to be a long process, and it's going to require a lot of attention, and it's going to require some energy, and it is possible that you will be tired at the end of this process, and that you will want to say, okay, so that's it, I ended my dissertation, then that's it, and I'm going to close the door on this process. And my plea here is for you not to do that, to actually disseminate your results, to know that once your dissertation gets, basically your committee approves your dissertation, that is the beginning of a different process, and is the process of letting people know what you found through publications, through conference presentations. If your dissertation can be translated into an intervention or something that can have some application, do it, because it is a lot of work. It is going to be at least a year of your life. So it makes sense that year of effort ends up having some fruits at the end, and that it ends up being known. And another thing is that this will be a very good time after you finish this study, a particular study that is guided by a particular research question. This will be a good time to go back to the data with a different research question and get some other answers from all that rich data that you have. Okay, so those are the things that I wanted to present very briefly about qualitative research. I am very passionate about this, and so if you have any questions or any questions in general about the process, you can let me know. As I said, I am a faculty member in the Couple and Family Therapy department, and the best way to reach me is by email, and my email is anino@alliant.edu. So that is it from me.
Dr. Nino, I'm going to thank you so much. That was a very, very interesting proposal. Makes me want to go out and write a quantitative study.